Do you believe a 14-year-old boy could watch himself die not in a mirror, not on a screen, but from outside his own body, lying motionless on an operating table beneath harsh white lights and the steady hum of machines? Could you believe that while his heart stopped beating and his brain ceased all activity, he saw everything? He saw himself. He saw the doctors. He saw his father holding his mother's trembling hand in the hallway. And he saw a light, one that didn't come from the sun or any lamp, but from a place without a name. And in that light, he heard a voice. Not with his ears, not through a monitor or headset, but from somewhere far deeper than any physical sense, from within his soul. The voice said only one thing: "You're not done." Short, clear, but it pierced through every layer of doubt. That boy's name is Michael Rivers. He's not famous. He doesn't claim any supernatural powers. He's just a kid born with a defect in his spinal cord, who needed surgery to live a normal life. But during that surgery, Michael stepped beyond a boundary science has long believed to be unbreakable. Clinical death is when everything stops. But for Michael, it was the moment everything began. So what happened in those few minutes? Is there truly something beyond the light at the end of the tunnel? And why would a child be shown his past lives? The answers aren't in any medical chart. They live inside the journey Michael has shared. And what he saw next just might change the way you see your own life. Michael had never run. Not because he didn't want to, but because his legs were never built to run. Spina bifida, they called it with a cold, clinical name. But to Michael, it was an invisible boundary. He'd sit by the classroom window watching other kids play, running, falling, bouncing back up as if nothing in the world could hurt them. For him, just standing without help was enough to draw every eye in the room, like they were witnessing a miracle. He smiled. He did it well. But inside, a part of his heart always longed to live like the others. Michael didn't hate his body. He just didn't want to be trapped in it forever. And then came the day. The doctors said they could operate. There were risks. There was a chance. But there was also hope. His parents held hands and nodded through tears. Michael stayed quiet, not because he was afraid, but because he didn't know if the hope they offered was real. The night before surgery, he asked his mother a question no one had taught him. "Mom, what if I don't wake up?" His mother was speechless. But Michael smiled, eyes glistening as if he already knew something no adult did. He didn't say another word, just whispered one silent plea in his heart. "If I get to live again, please let me understand why I'm here." Why me? Why am I different? He wasn't afraid of death. What Michael feared was living without knowing the meaning of his life. And that silent question, unspoken, unheard, was the very door that opened what would come next. Because in the moment the surgeon's blade touched his skin, and his heartbeat faltered, a journey beyond the body began. And what Michael saw in the next moment was nothing like anything you've ever imagined about death. The operating room was cold, as if every trace of emotion had been drained from the air. Harsh white lights poured down on Michael's small body, now draped in a green surgical sheet that lay still, like a lake before a storm. The heart monitor blinked in steady rhythm, each soft beep, echoing like a fragile melody, trying to hold on to life. The doctors began anesthesia, incision, and the routine of 100 surgeries they'd done before. But no one in that room knew that Michael had already begun to leave. Not running, not flying, just no longer being held back. In the span of a millisecond, the line on the monitor stuttered. Then flatlined. Silence. A sharp, sudden stillness. The lead surgeon froze. "We've lost the rhythm," a nurse whispered. Adrenaline was drawn. The defibrillator stood ready. Tension swept across the room like a wave. But not for Michael. He didn't feel pain. He didn't feel darkness. There was no panic. He simply found himself looking down. From somewhere above the ceiling, Michael saw himself small, fragile, lying motionless below. But the strangest part was, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't anxious. He didn't even want to go back. He saw every person. The salt and pepper-haired doctor was shouting commands. The young nurse with trembling hands was wiping sweat from her brow. The machines, the voices, they moved in urgency, but Michael wasn't pulled into it. He simply watched, quietly, like someone observing a silent film. And then, the light appeared. Not the glaring light of surgery lamps. Not harsh or blinding. But soft. Vast. Like a doorway opening in the middle of nowhere. And he was being drawn toward it. No resistance. No fear. Just a gentle, absolute invitation. No one in the room realized that Michael had begun to step into a place they could never follow. A place without time. Without form. Only presence more vivid than anything he'd ever known. But what waited beyond that light wasn't an ending. It was a journey, a place where life, death, and all the unspoken truths in between began to unfold. And the very first thing he saw beyond that doorway was his own life. But not as he remembered it, as he had never dared to face it. No one carried Michael away. No doors flung open. No voices called out. Everything simply hushed, as if an invisible hand had just slipped the final thread that tied him to the world. In an instant, he was no longer lying on the operating table. No longer a trembling body beneath piercing white lights. No longer a name on a medical chart. He was just a presence, light, clear, untouched by form or label. Michael saw himself, but not with his eyes. He looked down and saw his small, still body, surrounded by people fighting to bring him back. The doctor whispered urgently. A nurse moved in a panic. Machines screamed in rapid rhythm. But the place where Michael now stood, or more accurately existed, was no longer touched by sound, or haste, or fear. There was only silence. A strange, profound stillness. It felt as if the old world was still spinning below, while he had stepped into a higher layer, lighter, wider, far beyond the familiar. And then he saw the light. Not the light of surgical lamps. Not the kind that filters through eyelids. But a light that came from nowhere, and yet was everywhere. Gentle, warm, infinite. Like an embrace without arms, a touch without skin. The light didn't pull him. It didn't call his name. It simply was. And its very presence was an invitation he couldn't refuse. Michael moved toward it, without resistance, without needing a reason, as if his soul had always known that one day it would return. And in that vast, undefined space, he began to feel something wordless, an understanding that he had never truly been alone. Never forgotten, never a mistake. And then someone appeared. No face, no voice. But Michael knew. This was a life, a being, a presence brighter, deeper, and more loving than anything humanity had ever dared to name. They didn't need to speak. They simply helped him remember who he truly was. Not the disabled boy, not the patient on the table, but an eternal soul, limitless, walking a path to learn how to love. And then the images came. His life, every moment, every word, every glance, every action began to play before him, not like a memory but like a feeling. This wasn't about recalling. It was about experiencing. Everything Michael had ever done to another person, he now felt as if it were happening to him. When he had hurt someone, he felt their pain. When he brought joy, his heart lit up with that same warmth. There was no judgment, no punishment, but nothing was hidden. And Michael began to understand that life isn't about being right or wrong. It's about learning. And the greatest lesson of all is love. Not love that expects anything in return. Not love that earns awards or perfect scores. But the kind of love that touches another soul, with kindness or with a scar. Michael thought he had left life behind. But in truth, this was the first time he had ever truly seen it. And what he was about to witness next would forever change how he understood not just his existence. After seeing himself, not through a mirror, but through the eyes and feelings of others, Michael thought the journey might be over. But it wasn't. It had only just begun. The light was still there, wrapping around him in a peace too deep for words. And then, like an invisible tide, another layer of reality began to unfold. This time, it wasn't the life he knew. These were unfamiliar memories so distant, even Michael didn't understand why he could suddenly remember them. He saw himself, but not as Michael. Someone else. In another time. With a different face, but the same eyes. He saw himself as a young boy in Europe, working with wood, poor but gifted with skilled hands. Then as a soldier, caught in the tension of life and death decisions. Then, in a flash, as a woman, crying silently as she handed her child over to someone else to raise. None of these images lasted long. No setting was crystal clear. But he knew, without needing proof, they were all his. Each life was a chapter, not linear, not connected by logic, but inseparably bound by something deeper. In some lives he had caused pain. In others he had healed it. There were lives lived for pride and lives surrendered for purpose. But every one of them was a classroom. And the lesson, no matter the lifetime, was always the same: to love, to forgive, to let go. The things Michael had once thought unfair, his illness, the isolation, the feeling of being different, now appeared as pieces of a plan. Not a punishment, but a path chosen by his soul before it ever took form. He was shown that every soul carries invisible contracts before entering a new life. Some choose loss. Some choose disability. Some choose betrayal. But not because they are weak, because their souls are strong enough to learn from it, and help others learn too. And Michael began to understand. He was never a victim. He was a student. And the very thing he had once hated, his difference, was the exact tool his soul had chosen to grow. He also came to understand death isn't the end. It's a doorway into the next classroom. And no one is left behind. No soul is condemned forever. Every single one is given the chance to return to live, to love, to make mistakes, to make amends, and to continue the journey. Michael could feel the presence of other souls like glowing points of light, moving through that vast space, each one on its path, yet all connected by something immeasurable, love. There was no religion, no boundaries, only souls evolving. Every person you've ever met, loved, hurt, or been hurt by wasn't random. It was a sacred design, a divine arrangement, so you could learn the lessons your soul still needed to learn. Michael realized, if someone had hurt him, perhaps at a deeper level, he had agreed to it, so he could learn forgiveness. And if he had hurt someone, that too was part of his soul's exam in spiritual growth. The light didn't lecture. It didn't force. It simply made everything unmistakably clear. Every person is born with a reason. And that reason has nothing to do with fame or achievement. It is the evolution of the soul. Michael no longer feared death. He no longer hated his body. He no longer questioned why he was different. Because he now understood, the soul never chooses the wrong shape. Everybody is a classroom. And every wound is a sacred reminder that you're learning something important. And then, without words, the light asked Michael if he was ready. Not to go forward, but to return. Return to live differently. To live with a heart that remembers where it came from and why it was given this one life, even if it's short, difficult, or incomplete. And Michael nodded. Not because he wanted to leave that place, but because he had received the answer to the question he once whispered in the dark. If I get to live again, please let me know why I'm here. He knew now, and he was ready to return. But he wouldn't return alone. He would carry a message, and the moment he awoke, he would speak it. A message that would leave the room in silence, because it didn't come from memory. It came from the deepest part of his soul. Michael opened his eyes. There was no heavenly choir, no radiant light, just a white ceiling, the steady beep of the heart monitor, and his mother's tear-soaked gaze locking with his like a jolt of electricity, awakening a memory too deep to name. The doctor froze. A moment of silence stretched so long it felt like eternity. No one said a word, because no one believed Michael would ever come back. He looked around, slowly, not panicked, not confused, but with a strange stillness, as if something inside him hadn't fully returned. And then he spoke, weakly, hoarsely, but each word flowed into the room like a truth that couldn't be stopped. I left, but they told me I'm not done. No one understood. His mother burst into tears. The doctor assumed it was the anesthesia talking. But then Michael began to tell his story. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just like someone describing a dream too vivid to be imagined. He said he saw himself, that he knew exactly what they did when his heart stopped. The doctor was wearing blue scrubs, not the usual white coat. That the heart monitor beeped twice, then went silent. He described the light, the feeling of leaving his body, and the being or presence he had encountered. The doctor, who had performed hundreds of surgeries, stood frozen. The details Michael shared were impossible for him to have known unless he had truly seen. And then Michael fell quiet, as if there was a part of the story that couldn't be spoken aloud. People think death is the end, he said softly. But I just came back to my old classroom. And now, I have to keep learning. No one argued. No one believed him right away. But no one could deny something had changed. In those same eyes that had once held fear and sadness, there was now a quiet light. Gentle, deep. As if he had lived 1,000 years in the few minutes his heart had stopped. From that day on, Michael didn't become a prophet. He wasn't on the news. He didn't write a book. He just lived. But he lived differently. Quieter. More observant. He paused when someone was in pain. Stayed silent when there was nothing that needed to be said. And he knew sometimes, the one who carries the truth doesn't need to prove anything at all. They just need to live in a way that the truth speaks through their eyes, their touch, and what they choose to hold on to, or let go. Michael didn't need to be believed, because what he brought back wasn't meant to convince. It was meant to be given, and he would give it freely to anyone quiet enough to listen. But it was what he said last that made the doctor, a man of science, go still with chills running down his spine. One short sentence, but it reached a place that knowledge could never touch. And if you ever hear it, you'll understand why. That day, in a hospital room washed in pale sunlight, The doctor sat beside Michael and asked not like a man seeking answers, but like someone no longer certain of the world he once trusted. What do you think was the most real thing you saw? Michael looked at him. He didn't speak right away. He closed his eyes, then slowly opened them again, as if choosing each word not to answer the question, but to protect the silence. He said, "They didn't show me how many lives I've lived. They showed me how much I loved each of them." And the doctor, a man whose life had been built on scalpels, heartbeats, and data, didn't ask another question. He just sat there, longer than usual, as if afraid that standing up might make something sacred disappear. Michael's story never went viral. It didn't make headlines. But the people who heard it, they never lived quite the same. Some began to forgive. Some picked up the phone and called parents they hadn't spoken to in years. Some simply stood a little longer in front of the mirror, looking themselves in the eyes. Because what Michael brought back wasn't about the details. It wasn't about the light. It wasn't about having died or come back. It was something smaller. But something every one of us forgets. You didn't come here to get it right. You came here to learn how to love. And you don't learn that from books. You learn it from every heartbreak. Every time you make someone smile. Every time you forgive without an apology. Every time you choose silence instead of blame. And every time you pause just to feel. Michael lives. But not many know his name. He doesn't appear on television. He doesn't stand on stages. But if you ever saw him walking by, you might notice something. A quiet kind of peace that if he's always walking with someone beside him, even if no one else can see. And maybe that same presence is walking with you too. So if tomorrow you were to watch every moment of your life replay, every word you've spoken, every glance you gave, every person you've hurt, and you felt it all, as if it were happening to you, would you live differently? Michael saw it. He came back. And the final question he left behind wasn't meant to shock you. It was meant to hold up a mirror. A simple question, but not an easy one to run from. If you had no tomorrow, would you be proud of how you're living today? Death isn't the thing to fear. The real tragedy is living your whole life and never knowing why you were given the chance to live at all. You're still here. That means you're not done yet.